Hey there everybody, it's Mike DiLisio, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Great Evening Banquet from publisher Sashi & Sashi Games and designer Sashi. In The Great Evening Banquet, you have very fancy guests who are coming to a very fancy party, and all of those guests have pretty specific requirements that they are demanding upon you, and so you are trying to fulfill these very specific requests from these very fancy guests as best you can. Well, let's head over to the table, I'll show you how it plays, then we'll come back here and I'll let you know what I think. Alright, here you see The Great Evening Banquet, and for the purposes of this overview, what I'm showing you is the main board that it has the score track on it, and then the 4 carriage tiles that you'll be placing guests on, and then one player's individual player area. So everybody would have their own player area that would look like this, except that they would have the different colors. This one is a kind of a lilac color. And in the first couple of games, I suggest that you play with this arrangement of tables in this particular order, but they also have expert rules that will change that up quite a bit. But for the first couple of games, you should play it like this. These outer edge tiles, the commemorative photo end of game scoring tiles, they'll always be in this configuration. There's slight variations amongst the players as far as what shows up on these tiles. They may be different colors, different types of guests. These 2 tiles are always going to be the same no matter what the player. But generally speaking, this is a player area, and this is kind of the central area. The game is going to be played over 9 rounds, and that's going to be kept track of by this deck of cards here. This is the final round card, and what it says is that for turn order in the final round, it's going to go from whoever has the fewest number of points to the most number of points. The other cards distributed in the deck, you have 1 4, 4 3s, and 4 2s, and what you would do at the beginning of the game is you just shuffle these cards up, and then you're going to be placing these cards shuffled on top of that final round card so that that's at the bottom. And then the first phase of every round is to prepare the guest tokens. So the first player would draw the top card of the deck, they would look at the number on there, and they're going to place that number of guest tiles that are randomly shuffled in this bag onto each of the carriage tiles. In a 4-player game, you'll have 4 out there, so let's just do that. They would go ahead and place out 3 tiles on each of the carriage tiles, and then whoever's in first place, who is first in turn order, I should say, is going to choose one of those carriage tiles, and then is going to continue in clockwise order from there. So, what kinds of things are you looking for? Well, thematically, you are placing guests at these 6 tables in your area, and each guest has particular things that they would like, preferences, things along those lines, and those are represented on these tables. And so, if you look at the tables, they've got some pretty simple iconography. For this table, they simply don't want any guests with a blue background there. For this table, they're looking for 2 of the older gentlemen and then 2 of any other type of guests. Things along those lines. 2 guests with a brown background and then 2 of any other guests. None of the young gentlemen here. 2 guests who are toasting, that's what the wine symbols represent, things along those lines. So these are going to be the things that give you points during the game. When you fill up each table, you'll be scoring those tables. And then these tiles along the outer edge are going to be end game points. So let's say that if I am the first player, I know, for example, that this table wants 2 elder gentlemen there. I see a carriage tile right there that has 2 of them. So maybe I would go ahead and take this. And then in clockwise turn order, everyone is going to be selecting one of the others. And then simultaneously, we are placing the guest tokens. So the second round, the second phase was selecting and acquiring a carriage tile. The third is to go ahead and place them. You can place these anywhere you want within your player area, but you're probably going to be trying to hit as many of these requirements as possible. So let's say that perhaps I'm going ahead and I'm placing these 2 gentlemen here so that I could get full scoring for this table. I've guaranteed that when this table scores, it's going to give me full scoring. I could place this anywhere I want. I would likely not put it there. The other thing I'm considering is that this is telling me that for every pair of 2 yellow guests I have in this row, I'll get a point. Well, I didn't do great there, but you have to kind of pick and choose. This table is looking for a younger gentleman, so perhaps I would put that guest there. So once everyone has placed their guest tokens, then again in turn order, you go around and check if anyone has completed a table. Well, you can't do that in this round, this first round, because only 3 came out. If the 1-4 had come out and any player had chosen to put all 4 at one table, that could potentially be done in the first round. But let's say that on a later round, this player had gone ahead and put these 2 tiles at this table, triggering a scoring. And so when you score the VIP tiles, the first thing you're going to do is check if the requirements of the table have been met. Well, in this case, as I showed you, you were just looking for 2 gentlemen, so you're going to get full points for this table. If that had not been met, and there were not 2 elder gentlemen at this table, you would score half of the points that you would normally be entitled to rounded down. So it's a pretty big consideration. So how do they score? Well, you look at your player aid card, and this tells you the types of guest scoring and then the color configuration scoring. And so what this is telling you is that if you've got a pair of guests at the table, you get 1 point. If you've got 2 pairs of guests, you get 2 points. If you have 3 of the same guest, you have 3 points. If you have 4 of the same guest, it's 4 points. And if you have 1 of each of the guests, that is going to be worth 5 points. Then you would look to colors. You would see how many colors are represented at your table, and you're going to be getting points for that. If you have 4 colors at the table, you get a point. If you have 3 colors total at the table, you don't score at all. 2 colors of the table, 2, and if you have a single color at the table, 3. Finally, you check if there's a toasting bonus. If all 4 guests of the table have a glass of wine and they're toasting, that's 4 points. If 2 guests are toasting, that is 2 points. So let's look at this table. I already know I'm getting full points for it because I have the 2 gentlemen. I've got 1 pair of guests, so that is 1 point for that. I also look and I have 1, 2, 3 colors represented. That is 0 points. Not doing great so far. I have 2 guests that are toasting, and so that's 2 points. So looking at it all together, we get 1 point for the 1 pair of guests, we get no points for the 3 colors, and we get 2 points for the wine. So we're going to get 3 points. That you go ahead and you score immediately, and other players would do that in turn order. If there are multiple tables completed on the same turn, you get to choose in what order, but it really shouldn't make a difference anyway, all right? And so that's going to be happening around the table in turn order. When any player gets to the 10 spot, or when every player, they're going to be doing a swap with one of the guests in the grand salon there, and it's a mandatory action. You cannot choose not to do it. When you do that, you will take any of the guests in your player area, it can be from a completed table or an incomplete table, and you swap it with one of the guests up there. So you're bringing one of these guests in and you're putting one of your guests up there, and then as every player hits that, they have to do the same thing. You're going to be continuing to do this until you get to the final round, which will be when everybody will have all of their tables filled. And then, in addition to the points that you scored by completing the tables throughout the game, and when you do score a table, you're supposed to flip it over to show that that's already been scored, you're going to be doing end of the game scoring. And so this is going to be scoring for columns, and it's going to be scoring for rows. And it's going to be things like for every 2 yellow in this particular player area's spot, every 2 yellow guests will get you a point. Every 2 of the young ladies in this column will get you a point. Every set of 3 green guests will get you 2 points. Color bonuses, things along those lines. And everyone's going to have, as I said at the beginning, slightly different tiles for these 3, and these 2 will always be the same. Whoever has the most points at the end of 9 rounds is going to win the game of Great Evening Banquet. And as I said, there are some expert rules that you can incorporate into the game that will change significantly the setup of the tiles and change the feel of the game quite a bit as well. There you have it. Let's go back and let you know our final thoughts. All right, there you have the Great Evening Banquet, a game that has a relatively simple structure. You're playing through 9 rounds of distinct phases, and some of them are done in turn order, some of them are done simultaneously, but the rules don't get in the way of this game. Before we get to kind of the meat and potatoes of the mechanics, though, let's just talk about the components. And so this publisher, Sashi and Sashi, has put out a number of games, and I would say that across the board, whether it's a card game, which just has cards, they'll have nice quality cards, or in a board game like this, they have very nice quality components. And so what I'm talking about specifically here are the cardboard components. These carriage tiles are very thick. The guest tiles are also remarkably thick, thicker than normal for cardboard pieces, and it feels satisfying to reach around in the bag, to put them out in your player area. You don't get the sense that these are going to wear out after 10, 15 plays. They're going to stand up to repeated play. I don't think that you would ever need something like coin capsules or acrylic pieces for this game. I really do think they're going to hold up after time, even with all of the kind of rummaging around in the bag that you're going to do. They're just quality made, and so I think that that's of note. The card quality, as with all of the Sashi games, very good quality, linen finish. Clear, easy to read. The iconography, I think, is very, very well done and simple to understand. The art is something that I mention every time I review a Sashi game, because I think that the art is divisive for some people. I absolutely adore it. I've mentioned it many times over. I love the look and the aesthetic of Sashi games, but your mileage may vary. Some people don't like kind of this minimalistic look. And when many of Sashi's games have been brought over to Western audiences, they have oftentimes changed the art. Again, your mileage may vary there. I think it's adorable. So for the gameplay itself, this is something where this designer, Sashi, seems like every year just puts out these rock solid, simple to understand, quick playing games with meaty decisions. This is another in those lines. Recently he had Come Sail Away and Remember Our Trip. Those were both co-designs. Coffee Roaster, an early solo game that he's done. Let's Make a Bus Route. All of those games have remarkably simple rule sets, and they play quickly, but they have meaty decisions, and this is another in that line. The one thing I tend to like about Sashi's games is they're just a joy to teach. They're so simple to understand. People just seem to get it even before they start playing. Certainly by the time that they've placed out their first guess, like, everything just makes sense. And so it's a relatively welcoming game. It's a game that I would, not necessarily with players that were not familiar with any modern board games, I think that might be a little bit much for people to kind of keep in mind the different types of scoring and all of that. But certainly for anyone who's played, basic board games of the hobby variety, Ticket to Ride, things like that, I would feel comfortable showing them this game. If you are a heavier gamer, then those expert rules are going to be adding a bit more nuance and complexity, and maybe more appealing to people who like slightly heavier games. This is never going to be a heavy game, but using those expert rules certainly can add a bit of complexity, a bit more thinkiness to the experience. So I think depending upon what your play style or your group's play style is, you have a couple of different options there. It can be very welcoming. It can be a little bit more crunchy if that's what you or your group desires. It is a pleasant theme, right? I mean, it's this idea, and I actually have a lot of fun with this theme because I think it's very easy to kind of role play as snooty, old-timey guests that are going to an elaborate dinner party. So I've often had fun with that with people around the table. You can take the theme out of it completely and just play it as a point-generating type of a game, and it's fun that way too. But I do like getting into the theme of this game quite a bit. I love the amount of time versus the depth of decision making and the complexity of those decisions, especially as the game progresses, because at the beginning of the game you've got this wide open palette, you can kind of put things anywhere, but it's one of those games where as it goes on your choices become more constricted and more agonizing and more difficult, and I really do like that in this game. So the Great Evening Banquet, I think, is just another in a long line of rock solid, fun to teach, fun to play, quick to play, good decision games that this designer has been putting out year after year. And this is another one that is in the recommend category solidly. I'm giving the Great Evening Banquet an 8 out of 10. It's just a game that, again, I love to show people this game because it's just delightful, and everyone that I've taught it to has enjoyed it. I do think that you know, some of the heavier games may scoff and say, "Oh, there's not enough to this," but this isn't trying to be a heavy game, and if you do use those expert rules, I think you can add enough that even heavy gamers might want it as maybe a palate cleanser for them before they go on to their next big, heavy, mammoth Euro game. There you go. That is the Great Evening Banquet. I'm Mike DiLisio, and I will see you on the next one.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you like this review or whatever you just watched, wasn't it amazing? Check out our channel, Dice Tower. We have all kinds of things. We review games, we do top 10s, we play games live. It's all about board games, but especially the people who play them. Check out Dice Tower YouTube channel.